Disney has filed permits to destroy an attraction that has been controversial to Disney fans ever since it was announced. But what's in the details here is there's an ulterior motive to why Bob Iger ever had it made in the first place. Let's talk about that on That Park Place. Good morning, everyone. I am Jonas J. Campbell, an investigative reporter for That Park Place. But here with me is someone who's done some investigation of his own. Or maybe he's just been investigating all along and he's just telling us this massive amount of theme park knowledge here that no one else has other than Mr. Vash Sky. Vash, what you got for us?
I've got something juicy here for you. This is a story I've been keeping up for 5 years now. All coming
5 long
looks like
years.
to a close. Right, yes. And the reason for my obsession on this thing, because, well, at the time, it didn't make sense. So we're talking today about the NBA experience. As you know, we hit a little bit on the live stream that we just recently had, by the way, every Thursday at 12 noon Eastern. We covered the NBA experience closing and the permits being filed for a partial demolition of this space. Probably a replacement is coming, and that is good. This is a large space where the NBA experience used to occupy in Disney Springs here. As people will know, it was actually the former space for DisneyQuest, a venture by Disney, the theme park in a box concept that they wanted to roll out across the country. I believe Chicago is the only other location that actually opened, but they had plans for more. Go ahead, Joe.
Right, that was during that Eisner era when they wanted to do smaller things all across the world, including like Club Disney, which was like a Chuck E. Cheese Discovery Zone kind of thing.
We had a Club Disney a couple streets up from where I lived as a child, and we used to go there. It was so cool. It was so awesome, but unfortunately, the long-term viability was not there.
It's too bad it wasn't there long enough to get its own cyberspace mountain.
Yeah, I know, right? Ah, so cool. But unfortunately, it didn't work out. And neither did DisneyQuest, ultimately, where the last remaining location at Disney Springs, one of two, in fact, was there for quite some time, up until it closed as Downtown Disney in Walt Disney World when it transitioned into Disney Springs. So what was NBA Experience? Its replacement that took up a ton of real estate. Well, if people are familiar with like the NFL experience, whenever the Super Bowl comes to town, that's pretty much what this was, but an NBA equivalent, where you could, I don't know, saddle up to like, you know, a wax figure, it looks like, of the NBA commissioner. Well, that's weird.
Wait. First of all, saddle up. I didn't know there were horses in the NBA.
Well, I don't.
Is that Adam Silver?
That's Adam Silver, the commissioner, which we'll get into in a moment.
Okay. What little kid doesn't want to get their picture with a wax figure of the guy who never has anything to do with the actual playing of basketball?
This is you see, this is why I've stayed with this story for so long, because at the time it didn't make sense at all. Imagine this is a world-class destination. In fact, actually ranked the #1 Brit-Off, interestingly enough, recently. But a world-class destination where people are spending thousands of dollars to actually be here. Why would they take the time out of their day to take part in this NBA experience, which is just basically a line of just almost arcade games themed to the NFL, NBA. This doesn't make any sense. And everybody was trying to figure out what this was all about here. Even this article says, you know, is it worth checking out? Because even theme park insiders didn't quite know what to make of this whole thing. I think it was like $34 a day. Yeah, it says right here. Tickets were $34 for adults, $29 for children ages 3 to 9. Who would actually do this? So I would have probably let this thing go, except for the fact that Bob Iger and the commissioner of the NBA, Adam Silver, was there to see this thing open. So if we go right here, there's Adam Silver right there with Bob Iger. Now, what makes this particularly interesting is that, well, Bob Iger doesn't attend any of the openings of Walt Disney World attractions. And if he does, there's usually an ulterior motive behind them. For example, when Star Tours The Adventures Continue opened, I believe in 2010, 2011, somewhere around there, at Disney's Hollywood Studios, well, Bob Iger was there to help host the festivities of this grand opening celebration with George Lucas. And it was actually right before they went on stage that day where the groundwork was laid for George Lucas to be sold the idea by Bob Iger of selling Lucasfilm to Disney. So that whole thing started with that grand opening celebration. So what was the ulterior motive here? Well, interesting that there's been some interesting revelations from the time that this opened back in, I believe it was August of 2019, interestingly enough. People will note that after 2019 turned into 2020, Bob Iger was soon out. And what was going on around that time? Well, interestingly enough, this here from Hoops Hype, Bob Iger was interested in buying an NBA team. So right here, he's close with Silver, Bob Iger. This is via Puck on this website right here, thanks to years of Disney's ABC and ESPN broadcasting games. And he's even closer with Chris Paul, who was president of the NBA Players Association when the COVID bubble games were staged at Disney's compound in Florida, and who happens to play for the Suns. So this was really interesting. Was this all a ruse for Bob Iger to ingratiate himself with the NBA with the hopes of purchasing a team?
So the implication here would be that if you were trying to really put it over the top here, that if you should get a team, you would have to get authorization from the commissioner, the Players Association, and I don't know, with the NFL, don't you have to get authorization from the other owners in order to get a team? Is it similar in the NBA?
I thought it was. Interestingly enough, I believe the owners do have to sign off on it on some level. And interesting because New York Post actually talks about how Bob Iger was stonewalled from the purchase of buying a team by the prior owner of the Suns. Interestingly enough, and this all goes back to a ESPN story that led to the ouster of that former owner. His name was, I'll get to you in a moment, Robert Sarver.
This just goes to show that you think you can own whatever land you land on, that the basketball team is just a dead thing you can claim. But I know every hoop and net and, I don't know, board. I don't know anything about basketball here, but this is fascinating to me because Bob Iger at some point stopped functioning as a creative executive when he started firing anyone that was problematic to him and his image at the company, including people who were making making entertainment that people wanted to watch. John Lasseter comes to mind. James Gunn with his unfortunate sense of humor that he has now apologized for, or just fill in the blank here with other people who have left the company, including like Alan Fine and Ike Perlmutter, people who had success while they were at the company, and then they're gone, and then all of a sudden things aren't as good anymore. It's strange. So Bob Iger, it looks like he was maybe positioning the company in a way that was beneficial to Bob Iger, maybe not so beneficial to Disney. Of course, if you're doing all of these purchases, maybe you can be forgiven one multi-billion-dollar. I don't know how expensive this NBA experience is, but they did destroy DisneyQuest, which was an Eisner era initiative. Was popular, although probably wouldn't have gotten rid of it if it wasn't starting to lose money or need significant upgrades in order to stay with the times.
Correct.
But even me, and I know I'm prejudiced against sports because I just don't get it. But when I heard that the NBA experience was coming here, I just kind of scratched my head as to why you would do that. House of Blues makes sense. Cirque du Soleil, again, not my bag. More my bag than the NBA experience. I still don't get why they put this here.
And that's...
Go ahead.
And that's the question that we all had when this thing opened back in August of 2019 was, what is the long-term viability or sustainability of a business venture like this? Because this is a massive space, folks. I can't tell you how big this thing is. I mean, it rivals Cirque du Soleil, just the massive scale of this thing in Disney Springs. So a lot of people were asking themselves at the time, like, who would dedicate time to do this? Who would make this as part of their vacation? Would locals come and do this? Maybe once, then they wouldn't necessarily do it again. And not enough families looking for things to do visit Disney Springs to see an experience like this at all, much less an NBA experience. So a lot of people were questioning what was going on here. And it's weird how Bob Iger, of all the things that he would attend openings for, attended an opening for this along with Adam Silver. I think this is my personal opinion here, and I'm going to go ahead and open it up to the comment section and those watching the video here. I'm thinking he was using company resources in order to ingratiate himself into the NBA with the hopes of purchasing a team, because 6 months after this opens, he steps down from the CEO position, hands over the keys to Bob Chapek, and in March of 2020, this thing closes forever. It never opens again, and if it does, it's in a limited capacity. I'm not quite sure, but now they're filing permits for the partial demolition of this thing on the eve of Iger becoming a more permanent fixture at the Walt Disney Company going forward. So those those dreams of owning an NFL team, an NBA team, have gone through the hoop, so to speak.
And of course, we'll have all of our suspicions confirmed when the Disney company confirms the Bob Iger experience coming to Disney Springs.
Think about this, Jonas. Think about Mark Parker, let's say, being on the board, right? Nike guy, right? I'm sure he has some sway with the NBA. Think about the relationships between Disney and China, and how China is very influential in the current NBA sphere right now. Think about all those connections. Especially in China, right? So think about a lot of the decisions that have been made involving the Walt Disney Company and its assets to facilitate something like this. One could speculate greatly. And we know that Bob Iger thinks of himself as kind of Disney, right? You remember a story that ESPN actually ran where Bob Iger was in front of the other NFL owners trying to sell the Rams being at a certain location in Southern California. And he said to the whole, 31 owners of the NFL, hey, look, listen, I've given so much money to you guys. I should be listened to when it comes to this proposal. And Jerry Jones, the very notorious owner of the Dallas Cowboys, said, wait a minute, you gave us money? I think those were Disney shareholders that gave us money via ESPN. So we already know that Bob Iger feels that he himself is representative of Disney.
Which is, of course, as we've often implied here, is the unfortunate situation that is affecting the Walt Disney Company now. I personally think it's time for a leadership change there, and maybe that won't happen until there's a board change as well. Do you have additional insights for us before we finish up here?
Just that. Look, I think Bob Iger has made a lot of decisions that have necessarily enriched himself as part of this ride of a lifetime, and not necessarily the Walt Disney Company. I think there's history going back even further and beyond just this and the scope of this video. And this is why it's so important that somebody have a check on this guy, at least via the board members. This is why somebody like Nelson Belt or even Jay Rasulo aren't the worst things to have on a board, to keep some of those personal ambitions in check.
Right. And when someone has that much entrenched power and functions more like a politician than a person who is trying to make money, then they are obviously not lined up with shareholder interests. Not that I'm connecting those two dots between Bob Iger and a politician who happens to be running one of the largest media and indoctrination organizations on the planet. Anyways, that being said, guys, thank you so much for being here to the end of the video. Like this video if you like this video. Consider sharing it out if you know someone who might be interested, one, in the NBA experience, or two, in the shenanigans of Mr. Bob Iger. And of course, consider subscribing to That Park Plays for all the news that should be fun.
Thanks for watching That Park Plays News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.